This meeting is called to order in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. This meeting was included in a list of meeting dates sent to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, and the Highland Park Planet on January 3rd, 2019, and was posted on the bulletin board of Borough Hall, 221 South Fifth Avenue on January 3rd, 2019, and has remained continuously posted as required by law. Fire exits are to my left and to my right. If you come up to speak, please speak into the microphones, and assistive listening devices are available. Mr. Friedenreich, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Brill-Miller.
Here.
Councilman Fine.
Here.
Councilwoman Foster Dublin. Councilman George.
Here.
Councilman Hale.
Here.
Councilwoman Kim Chohan.
Here.
Councilwoman Welkowitz.
Here.
Borough Attorney.
Here.
Borough Administrator.
Here. All right. Well, one of the best jobs I have as mayor is to be able to honor some of our residents for a job well done. And tonight I have a proclamation for the Eagle Scouts in Highland Park. So I'm going to ask Council Member Matt Hale to join me up here with the members of the Scout Troop. Received the rank of Eagle Scout on January 9th, 2019. Whereas Eric has been actively involved in scouting for 8 years, joining Troop 55 in 2011. And whereas Eric has earned over 25 merit badges, including ones in environmental science, emergency preparedness, first aid, traffic safety, archery, rifle, and shotgun shooting. And whereas Eric has served the troop as senior patrol leader from 2015 to 2017, and as a troop guide from 2017 to 2018. And whereas Eric's Eagle Scout project was to build and install benches at Highland Park's Environmental Center on River Road, he worked with the Highland Park Environmental Commission to get approval for the reflective benches, and then solicited local businesses for materials and supplies. He organized his friends, family, and fellow Boy Scouts to build and install these benches. His Eagle Scout project took over 90 hours of community service to accomplish. And whereas Eric is a graduate of Highland Park High School and is currently a freshman at Rutgers University, he hopes to someday work as a video game designer with his own comic book series, and perhaps work in the movie production business. Now, therefore, I, Gail Brill-Miller, Mayor of the Borough of Highland Park, do hereby proclaim Eric Yang a distinguished Highland Park resident, and hereby recognize and admire the hard work and dedication of Eric Yang, and congratulate him on his many achievements. Thank you, Eric. This is for you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Council reports. Councilwoman Kim Chohan, do you have a report this evening?
Yes, I do, Mayor. I'm delighted to announce the Highland Park Arts Commission has been awarded a grant in the amount of $4,500 from Middlesex County Office of Arts and History. The grant will fund a project called Access Granted. It's a two-part photo essay creative response project where the commission will pair up with photographers and individuals with disabilities in the community to respond to accessibility. The photographers will be taking photos of the individuals as they navigate their day-to-day. The participants will have an opportunity to write or tell their story in a creative way. The project will close with a gallery exhibition. This is all an effort to provide a space for people with and without disabilities to learn together and foster stronger relationships. Allison Baldwin wrote the grant and will be spearheading the project all year. Thank you, Allison. Speaking of the Arts Commission, we kicked off our Windows of Understanding last month on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The art walk will be displayed until the end of Black History Month, February 28th. Visit windowsofunderstanding.org for all the details. The next Tables of Understanding will take place at Sushiana, February 24th, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. I know the mayor will probably mention this in her report. If you haven't noticed yet, our new signage is up at the Community Center, formerly known as the Highland Park Senior Youth Center. The next monthly senior luncheon will be on February 26, 11 a.m., followed by a discussion with the mayor. And last month on January 16th, I completed a police ride-along. It gave me a great overview of what is involved in patrolling. It is amazing the number and types of situations the police department gets involved in. They truly have to be ready for anything. And last month, I also attended the Intro to Sewing class at the Highland Park Public Library. They made me promise them that I would share my awesome experience and show off my finished bag that I'm going to carry my council items in now. So thank you to the Highland Park Public Library for hosting these free events for our community. It was really a great experience. I had to actually share my sewing machine because the class was overbooked. It was amazing. Thank you again. And speaking of the library, the Highland Park Historic Commission next meeting is scheduled for February 17th at 1:15 at the library. This past weekend, I attended the FCD Chinese New Year celebration, which is always a joy, as many Highland Park students attend this Saturday school all year round. And last but not least, Happy Lunar New Year to our community that celebrates. Wishing you much fortune in the year of the pig. And that's my report, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Hale, do you have a report?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add my congratulations to Eric before he leaves. But I also wanted to make sure that I know how hard it is for Eagle Scouts, for Eagle Scout parents. So I wanted to make sure that your parents who have spent a lot of time schlepping you from point A to point B are also recognized tonight. So, but thank you very much for coming, and thank you for making Highland Park proud. So. I also wanted to make sure that to remind everyone that tomorrow night we are going to be holding a open public forum about the hiring of a new police chief and a new police captain. This event is going to take place at the community center from 7:30 to 9. At the forum, there's going to be a number of different things. We're going to have the borough's labor attorney who's going to explain the process of hiring that we've been following, the process in New Jersey, the process in Highland Park, so that everyone knows exactly what we're doing to hire a new chief and a new captain. A big part of that process is actually an oral interview with the candidates. And a big goal of tomorrow is to have the community come up with a series of questions and ideas which we can pose to the various candidates about the way that they envision the Highland Park Police Department under their leadership. We've defined or designed the forum, I think, in kind of an innovative and a new way. The idea is that instead of having a large discussion group of everybody in the meeting, we're actually going to try and break up into smaller groups around smaller topics so that we can have a little bit more of an in-depth discussion on what are the ways that the new chief might think about external communications with the public, or what they might think about benchmarks for success, or what they might think about ways of handling internal discipline. So there's a number of different categories. So the goal of this forum is to have an interactive discussion where we can really sort of understand what the community is interested in with these important leadership positions. So at the end of these sort of small focus groups tomorrow night, there'll be a report out and a readout session so that everyone will be able to hear what the different thoughts are and what the different questions are. So I'm excited at the potential of this. I think it's an opportunity for people to really have some input into where the police department is going to go under the new leadership. So I hope and I encourage that everyone come out tomorrow night. It's Wednesday, February 6th from 7:30 to 9 at the community center.
Matt, if I could just add to that.
Sure.
The evening is going to be run basically by the new commission that was recently appointed under the skillful guidance of Councilman Hale. The new commission is temporarily called until
The new in about 20 minutes it will be called the Highland Park Equity Commission. Isn't
Until the next meeting.
I apologize. I thought it was. I thought we were up there already. So it's temporary, called the Bias Free Commission. It will be the Highland Park Equity Commission. And yes, the HP Equity Committee is the one who will be leading this tonight. They'll be leading the different focus groups, or tomorrow night, leading the focus groups. It really is an opportunity for some significant community involvement into this important issue.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Councilwoman Welkowitz.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. Our zoning board met on Monday, January 28th, and they held their reorganization meeting. To no one's surprise, all our officers and professionals were reappointed. Special congratulations to our volunteers, Chairwoman Judy Richmond, Vice Chair Rob Rosner, and Secretary Dana Corbman. Earlier today, I was joined by Trish Sanchez and Sean Meehan, Chair and Vice Chair of our Safe Walking and Cycling Committee, Rebecca Hirsch, Director, and Javier Zavaleta of Main Street, as we attended a graduate class at Rutgers Blaustein School of Planning and Public Policy. Thanks to Leanne Von Hagen and the students of Blaustein, Laura Torchio and Kayleen Koch from Project for Public Spaces for working on a new placemaking project which will be presented here in Highland Park on March 26th. This is a special project only for Highland Park. The purpose of the studio project is to teach the students new economic development strategies that focus on creating great places for people to live and work. We'll be doing some outreach with our community. The studio will explore how actively engaging community stakeholders in the placemaking process can transform business as usual and lead to economic vitality and inclusive, healthy places. Middlesex County has been active in advertising the county with a new website, a whole ad campaign. You may have seen them on TV and in various places. And tomorrow, the mayor, Borough Administrator Hover, and I will be meeting with the county to discuss how Highland Park can be featured in their new marketing pieces. We're very excited about that. And lastly, I just want to wish a happy Lunar New Year and wishing much happiness and prosperity to all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Fine, do you have a report?
I do not have a report tonight, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Council President George?
I just have a brief report, Mayor. Thank you very much. First, I'd like to wish all of our residents a memory for Black History Month, as well as greetings for the Chinese New Year. We had a recent meeting that the Borough Administrator worked very hard to put together about our perennial complaints about the deer problem. But this was a gathering of two representatives from the Fish and Wildlife under Environmental Protection. They brought in a lot of information about all of the methodologies used for controlling deer, what some of the problems were, and gave us some great suggestions. I know Councilman Hale was there as well, members of the Meadows Trail and the Sanctuary. So we had all different pieces with different information, and out of that, as the administrator will perhaps fill in a little bit more, their suggestion is the best way to get a handle on it is modern technology. They actually use drones, so we're in the process of negotiating with a company that does these types of drone surveys of the town to tell us where the deer are for real, where they're hiding out for real. So we are moving forward on that project. I know that Councilwoman Foster Dublin has also worked on that as well for years, but we are actually moving forward on that. I'd also note on the consent agenda, there are a couple of items of some importance. We are finally going out to bid on the toters to finalize the new one-armed bandit project. We will get the toters are the big garbage cans with the handles that the machine can pick up. So we're finalizing that and should have the route very shortly. And also, we're going out for the grant for the NJDEP's provision of electric charging stations. There are several different versions. They pay 100% if it's installed on a municipal property. They pay up to 60% for street installations. And we've been talking about some plans for moving some of our fleet to EV, as well as providing those services for the public as well. Just final note, excuse me. The Meadows Trail and the Environmental and the Native Plant Preserve are putting together their program for this year's strategic plan, and we will also be touching base on our 1, 3, and 5 year plans. So, and this year we're trying something a little bit extra, is to get comments from the public. So if you email me, if you have any suggestions, I know benches, which the Scouts put in, had been a discussion point for many years. We also are starting to salvage a large stack of the old park benches that were on the streets before the Main Street streetscape over a decade ago, and we're beginning to place those around the volunteers. So please email me a comment at the Borough website. And finally, just note, STAC is working daily on the Emerald Ash Borer program. I'm getting daily updates on the removal of borough trees. That program appears to be ahead of schedule, appears to be doing well. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Borough Administrator, do you have a report?
Councilman George teed up a couple items for me. He did a great job covering the deer update. So yes, we are looking at doing a drone survey. It would be an infrared survey where we can really get a more accurate head count, which would then give us a better baseline for appropriate action, if any. So that's where we are, and then we're still tracking to have a community meeting to talk about our options. But this is kind of a last key piece of information we want to add into the mix. So I'm excited that it looks like we have a fairly affordable way forward in terms of that. The other thing I just wanted to mention was, and thank everybody who came out last Thursday evening to come discuss the future of Cleveland Avenue as we advertised it, but in the context of a proposal for a private school towards the end of that street. That was the first of what will probably be many discussions on this topic, but we were pleased with the turnout and the feedback that we received on that. And so I just wanted to let you know that We're now regrouping, we're taking the feedback, we're going to figure out our next steps, and we'll keep you posted on what those next steps end up being. And I think that those are my 2 items. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Borough Attorney, do you have a report?
I have no report, Madam Mayor.
All right, I have a few things here. Before we go any further, I'd like to ask you all to take a moment of silence for in the memory of a good friend to Highland Park who we lost the other day. Babs Sipperstein was a trailblazer for the LGBTQ rights community. Her namesake, she is the namesake of new New Jersey laws in that area, and she was an active member of the Pride Center. I had the great opportunity to meet her on several occasions and to work with her on several projects. I'd like us all now to remember Babs and take a moment in her memory. Thank you. So Highland Park had another fire last week, and I want to just talk for a moment about some of the heroics of our public safety professionals. On February 1st, 2019, at 3 a.m., the Highland Park Police Department started receiving 911 phone calls about smoke in an apartment building at 100 Montgomery Street. The Highland Park Fire Department was dispatched along with officers from the police department. Firefighter Norman Shammy arrived at 100 Montgomery Street along with officers Elena Giles and Joseph O'Lara. The officers observed smoke and smoky conditions in the lobby of the building and began evacuating residents, while firefighter Shammy noticed flames coming out of the window on the north side of the building. Officers Giles and O'Lara were able to gain entry to a first-floor apartment. Inside, they discovered an unresponsive male lying on the floor. The officers were able to pull the victim to safety while firefighter Shammy was fighting the fire from the outside kitchen window. The victim was triaged outside of the apartment and taken to Robert Wood Johnson Hospital. He was then transferred to St. Barnabas Hospital's Burn Center for further treatment. He remains in critical but stable condition. Both officers were taken to St. Peter's Hospital for treatment of smoke inhalation and were released later that morning. Numerous surrounding agencies responded to help with this fire, including fire companies from New Brunswick, Piscataway, and East Brunswick, the Middlesex County Fire Marshal's Office, the Highland Park First Aid Squad, Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital, and the Milltown First Aid Squad. Highland Park's OEM coordinator, James Polos, was also on scene organizing and managing all of the incoming resources from around the area. All but 3 apartments were cleaned and residents have returned to the original apartments. 3 families were displaced and have been resettled into 3 different apartments in the same complex. I know I received a lot of emails and questions about the fire. Right now, I don't think that there is a need for any financial support, but if we learn something different, we'll be sharing that information with you. Councilwoman Kim Cho-han had mentioned the Tables of Understanding, and she knows it's a pet project of mine. This year, our Windows of Understanding, which is a social justice art program featuring art from local artists in the windows of stores downtown, but also in New Brunswick. For the first time for us this year, we're bringing that same idea of social justice to the tables of 3 of the restaurants in town. I was able, along with Council President George, to attend last Sunday's first Windows of Understanding. It's an opportunity for folks who don't normally get a chance to sit down and break bread together, to share ideas and thoughts, and talk about some issues that might be important to all of us, but sometimes aren't the easiest things to talk about. There is another Tables of Understanding coming up, I think, this Sunday.
The 24th at Sushiana.
Okay. So February 24th at Sushiana is the next one. I believe there's one coming up at the Blue Horse also.
Okay, I don't know.
And I think that might come before the 24th. Please look at the borough's Facebook page for updates on these. I urge all of you to try to find some time to stop by. They're all on Sundays. So come and meet your neighbors and share some of your ideas with them. I also want to mention that tonight, I see Tina sitting in the audience there, and she reminded me, tonight we will be voting on second reading of the new plastic bag ban ordinance here in Highland Park. And as after it's voted on here, if it passes tonight, then you'll be hearing more from us about when the actual enforcement of this ordinance will go into effect. So I want to thank Tina and Sustainable for their hard work on this. I want to thank all the residents who participated in the open public meeting discussions we had on this topic. Your input was used, and some of the comments were added to the ordinance to make it the best it could possibly be for Highland Park. So congratulations to everyone. And that's right. And now we're ready for our first public discussion session. If anybody has anything they want to say, please step up to the microphone. Let me remind you that this each person for this session is allowed to speak for 3 minutes, and there's a total of 15 minutes allowed for this session. So please step up if you would like to say something. It's a microphone right there. And you can turn it to, right. Very good.
Hi, so my name is Linda Wang. I'm 16 years old. I live in 302 Leah Lane, obviously in Highland Park. And I also want to wish everyone a happy Lunar New Year. And what I'm about to say isn't exactly cheerful, but it does end on a positive note.
Okay.
Yeah, so to begin, my house was burglarized while I was alone inside on Friday, January the 25th. It was 6 o'clock in the evening when I was taking a nap. I was rudely woken up by the sound of the doorbell ringing, as well as loud banging.
The microphone, please.
Oh, sorry. So in my sleep fog state, I went down the stairs to answer the door. But then it hit me that something was terribly wrong. So I called 911 straight away. There had been another break-in in my community around 2 months prior. And that was why I was on high alert for these situations. So I ran for the master bedroom, locked that door, ran to the bathroom, locked that door, and then ran into the walk-in closet and hid inside the clothing. I was on the phone with Officer Bibby at this time, and Officer Garrity and DaCosta were already on their way to my house. So these burglars, they broke into the front door like shockingly quickly within minutes. And they headed right upstairs to the master bedroom where I was, and they broke that door too. And after that, there was silence. I think they got spooked because the officers had already come. So the robbers didn't really have time to do anything before they had to make their escape. I'm really very grateful to Officer Garrity and Officer DaCosta because they got to my house so quickly, and they handled the situation very professionally and thoroughly. So they were extremely patient while talking to me in my state of incoherency and my mom, who was panicking at the time. They gave great advice in terms of security measures and how to fix our door. And later, when Sergeant Lankry and Detective McGraw came to question us about the robbery the following Monday, they were also really understanding of our paranoia. My mom and I, we didn't want to open the door because they were in like plain clothes, so they even like brought over a uniformed officer to calm us down. And they reassured me that the robbers weren't after me, so I'm really grateful for that. And I'm thankful that they're working to get to the bottom of this. And since these burglaries have been happening all around Highland Park, as well as in the surrounding towns, I think everyone here should know that information. My community has been really concerned after these 2 robberies, and now we're taking proper measures to increase security. And hopefully we'll be able to provide more information for the investigation. I know that the police department has the responsibility to keep us all safe, but I feel that everyone who lives in Highland Park also shares in this responsibility. Everyone seems to think that no, bad things won't happen to me until they do. So I urge everyone to be more vigilant and to like increase security somehow. Overall, I want to thank the Highland Park Police Department for their quick response, which prevented anything bad from really happening. And I think we should all give the entire Highland Park Department of Emergency Management a huge round of applause for their work that they do to protect us and keep us safe.
I want to thank you for your comments and alerting the rest of the residents of Highland Park, but I also want to thank you for thinking on your feet and making that call, even though it was from the closet and you were scared. You did the right thing.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Herb Gross. I live at Adelaide Gardens. Tonight, we've been informed through the Veterans Hotline, strictly for the veterans, that the fighting in Afghanistan, Iraq, will be intensifying, which I dare not go into right now. But I've been asked to please ask everyone in attendance tonight, everyone watching TV, will you people watching and listening to what I say, please say a special prayer each day for our fighting men and women, our wonderful men of the National Guard, the men of the U.S. Air Force, the men of the U.S. Navy, and the men and women of the United States Marine Corps that are fighting for your freedom. And as I said many times before, freedom is not free. You have to fight for it. You have to earn it. And the men of the National Guard are doing a wonderful job in protecting your freedom. So when you go home tonight and tomorrow, and you go to your church, your synagogue, your temple, please ask your priest, your rabbi, to please say a special prayer for all our fighting men and women that are protecting your freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. Okay, getting back to the agenda here. May I have a motion to adopt or reject the resolution to approve the emergency temporary appropriations?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Fine,
Yes.
Councilman George,
Yes.
Councilman Hale,
Yes.
Councilwoman Kim Chohan,
Yes.
Councilwoman Welkowitz.
Yes.
Clerk, could you please report on advertising the plastic bag ordinance for consideration of passage on final reading by title?
An ordinance of the Borough of Highland Park in Middlesex County, Bring Your Own Bag ordinance, was duly advertised for consideration of passage on final reading by title, and affidavits of publication are on file. The ordinance was posted and made available for public inspection as required by law.
May I have a motion to take up the ordinance on final reading by title?
So moved.
Second.
Any public hearing on this? Mrs. Burkott, do you want to say something?
Ms. Picard, 307 Magnolia. I'm very opposed to anything plastic, especially the plastic bags. I don't use them. If I need something for trash, I go to the supermarket around the corner from me and pick one up. I don't keep them in my house. I think you should charge a large sum of money for people who want to use them. I was at the supermarket the other day and I saw the cashier ringing up one item and putting it in a plastic bag. I mean, they were bigger things. Maybe the size, a little smaller than the size was paid. The cart was overflowing. If she would have had to pay 10 cents for every one of those bags, I guarantee you.
And that's why there's a fee in this ordinance.
That's what I wanted to say.
You're gonna like this one. You'll like this ordinance.
Anybody else?
have another question?
Yes, please step up to the microphone.
How much is the fee for this in this ordinance?
What is the final fee for?
The fee structure works like this. After the 2-month educational period, there's a 6-month period where a patron or a customer will be charged 10 cents per plastic bag. At the end, no, wait, it gets better. At the end of that first 6 months of the 10-cent fee for plastic bags, their plastic bags will be banned, and paper bags or other recyclable bags for single-use bags will be available, and there will be a fee of those for those bags of 10 cents. The reason is that the real name of this ordinance is the Bring Your Own Bag Ordinance. It is to encourage people to bring their own reusable and constantly recyclable bags and eliminate all the waste of repackaging, especially with plastic.
So you said after 6 months, right?
It's 2 months period, which is education and getting ready. At the end of that 2 months begins a 6-month period where there's a 10 cents per plastic bag fee. At the end of that, there will then become no plastic bags allowed, 10 cents per paper or other recyclable bag.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. All right then.
One more.
Sorry.
For the plastic bags, as Mrs.
Bickhart.
Bickart said, will stores also be, will there also be some contact to stores to recommend less usage of plastic bags?
As we said, there's a 2-month period where we already have educational materials, a list of suppliers, and don't forget, most stores buy in a much larger bulk than we would consider. They buy in the millions of bags. We have generated lists of suppliers who that they could contact. We've had several meetings with merchants already, and we'll be having more presentation. It'll be posted on the borough's website. It'll be circulated through Main Street as to all of the alternatives and where they can find them, and also contact with each merchant. We do have a list through Main Street of the merchants, and they'll be advised of all the changes. It's been circulated, the ordinance, and because it's gone through a couple of changes, and we've gotten those changes out as well, and there'll be more circulation about that. We may even have another public meeting about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay. May I have a resolution to adopt or reject and advertise the ordinance on final reading by title?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Fine?
Yes.
Councilman George?
Ms. Weishaus and the rest of Sustainable Highland Park will say that I opposed this idea when we first started talking about it, but I wish that everybody would do what I did, which is think about it. And especially in my volunteer work, which is in the plant preserve in the meadows, doing cleanup work and walking around by myself in that area, the amount of plastic convinced me that we needed to do something. Then the working with all of the different ideas in Sustainable Highland Park, I eventually became probably one of the more radical members of the group. I proposed a 25-cent per bag fee, and I was talked down out of the trees by Ms. Weishaus on that. We put a lot of work into that, and we did something else that's relatively new. We took this proposal, because it seems rather small, but it's rather large, through a vetting process of public input, public hearings, actually getting the ordinance first version, second version, third version on the borough's website and out to the merchants with quite a lot of public input and feedback. And that process alone was very valuable in increasing the transparency under which we're working, and we'll be using it a lot more in the future. I vote yes.
Councilman Hale?
I just wanted to say real quick that the work that Councilman George has done on this, not only for, it's not very often that you have someone who's elected who says, I started one way and I came around because I actually looked at this and looked at it hard. And I think that that's something that we ought to recognize. He came at this not expecting to support this, and thoughtfully and diligently went through a process to recognize that this is a good thing. And I think that's something that we ought to recognize. And I think his leadership on this is something that we should recognize. And I wholeheartedly say yes to this.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilwoman Kim Chohan?
Yes, I just have one quote. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Yes.
None of this is going in the minutes. Councilwoman Wilkowitz?
Yes, just a moment. To the Boy Scout who stepped up before. I'm sorry, what's your name, sir?
Adam Straw.
Okay, great. And good question. And as Councilman George mentioned, we had several meetings. We had group meetings with merchants, but I have to say that for the past year or more, the woman behind you, Chairwoman of Sustainable Highland Park, Tina Weishaus, and the members of Sustainable Highland Park have been meeting with merchants privately to discuss the ordinance, to work through it all. How many revisions? Thank you, Councilman George. I can't tell you.
3 revisions, yes.
Three revisions on this to really address the problems that we were hearing. I'm so glad that you put in to the ordinance a 2-month educational period, because it is about educating, and we are all here and available to answer any questions and work through any issues to make this a success. Special thanks again, Councilman George, Chairwoman Tina Weishaus, and the wonderful volunteers at Sustainable Highland Park. This was a huge lift. Congratulations. Thank you. Yes.
She's done.
Oh, she's done.
I'm done.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda.
No. No.
No, you have one more.
No,
Number 12.
No. Number 12.
oh, number 12.
That's it. It's passed.
It's not in effect.
Okay. Thank you, Tina.
Tina, before you
We
leave,
can't, Tina, we're not allowed to. Yeah.
Not yet.
You missed your public hearing.
No, there's another public hearing.
Public discussion.
but
Not
but
yet.
I can. And the next target, we're going to go after straws and styrofoam and such. So that'll be on the agenda at the next meeting.
And please feel free to stay if you want for the next session. Okay. All right. Number 12. Clerk, can you report on introduction of boards, committees, and commissions ordinance for consideration of passage on first reading by title?
An ordinance of the Borough of Highland Park, Middlesex County, Chapter 9 of the Code of the Borough of Highland Park, Boards, Committees, and Commissions, has been introduced in writing by the council as a whole for consideration and passage on first reading by title. No, we have to do a motion first.
May I have a motion to adopt or reject and advertise the ordinance on first reading by title?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Fine,
Yes.
Councilman George,
Yes.
Councilman Hale,
Yes.
Councilwoman Kim Chohan.
Yes.
Councilwoman Welkowitz.
Yes.
Okay, now moving on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion to adopt the following items, number 13 through 29? Or 30?
30.
Okay, no, so again, that's number 13 through number 30. May I have a motion to adopt or reject?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilman Fine,
I just want to highlight that there's a resolution included in the consent agenda that authorizes a shared services agreement with the Township of Piscataway for tax collector services, and I vote yes.
Councilman George,
I'm hoping that shared services resolution takes fruit and takes flower and grows. Yes.
Councilman Hale,
Yes.
Councilwoman Kim Chohan,
Yes.
Councilwoman Welkowitz.
Yes.
Okay, now we have the second public discussion session. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say? Mrs. Bickard?
Ms. Pickard. Trash on the streets, on the sidewalks, blowing all over. And the trash cans, after they've been dumped, thrown on the curb, off the curb, half on and half off. I've complained about it, and for a while, my 2 containers would be sitting on my sidewalk, but my neighbors not. And even the ones now that come, the big ones that come with the wheels under them, they're lying on the curb. Cars can't even move out sometimes because the container is in between. That's one issue.
So hold on. Borough Administrator, would you please speak to the supervisor at the Public Works Department about that?
And I wrote something down here, but I can't figure out how. 297-5. What do you have here for 297? Okay.
Nothing.
I don't see anything.
No, I don't know what it was. I just don't feel safe walking on the streets. I remember before I lived here, I once got a ticket because a tenant put their garbage out the night before because she wasn't going to be on my neighborhood at that time. Garbage pickup was on Mondays, and she was going away for the weekend, and so she had put it out on Sunday because she wasn't going to be home early enough on Monday morning. And I got a ticket because I was the property owner. Garbage cans are sitting there the whole week. Sometimes they're empty, sometimes they're full. If they aren't, I don't know what, I happen to like the guys who are coming down my street. So it's not that I'm picking on them, but there's just something wrong.
Well, right. Well, they don't do the ticketing, but I'm going to ask Lieutenant Hamill. I'm not sure if it's the police department or code enforcement that would be involved in this ticketing.
Mayor,
Let
it's
him
code
answer,
enforcement.
please.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So in that case, Borough Administrator again?
Yep, we'll talk to Scott.
Okay, thank you.
I'm never in favor of tickets. I'm in favor of teaching people.
Yeah, well, I know from my own personal experience, because I do like to walk around town, the bulk trash situation is what my pet peeve is, when people leave it out there for weeks before bulk trash is scheduled. So I know what you're saying.
And the other thing is, it's too late for this year. I just finished raking my last leaves yesterday because my neighbors refused to rake theirs. And so the wind has been
Right.
blowing them over. Is there anything?
So I actually have been having a conversation with the code enforcement officer about the possibility. In fact, Councilwoman Welkowitz and I started talking about this a couple of years ago, sort of a quality of life program. So that is something that we can pick up again, and you know, I have been mentioning some things to him. We're looking into a way to address the quality of life issues that you're talking about.
Yeah, because one of my children came to visit, doesn't live in this area, and she said, put a fence there. I said, if I put a fence there, my neighbors can't open the car door.
Yeah,
You know, I don't want a fence there.
yeah.
I would like the owner of the property, not the tenant, but the owner of the property, rake the leaves away so they don't all blow on my lawn. And then they sit in my steps and I have to come out and clean it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public discussion? Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn to conference?
So moved.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Not on here. It just.
It is. It's right there.
Okay, and once we finish with conference, we'll be going into executive session for acquisitions and litigation. Thank you.